Dr. Emma Mitchell drummed her fingers against the polished conference table in Lunar Base Alpha, trying to hide her growing unease. The metallic tang of recycled air did nothing to calm her nerves as she watched the Xar ambassador's translucent tentacles ripple beneath its environmental suit. Something felt wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. "Ambassador," she said, keeping her voice steady, "you haven't answered my question about your species' method of technological advancement." The creature's crystalline eyes shifted, refracting light in impossible patterns. Behind her, she heard Major James Cooper shift his weight, his ceremonial sidearm, now feeling considerably less ceremonial, holstered at his hip. The Xar's translation device hummed. "Irrelevant queries. Your species will contribute its biological and technological distinctiveness to the Dominion." "Resistance, his." The ambassador paused, as if savoring the word. "Historically futile." Mitchell's head suddenly exploded with pain. The room spun as alien thoughts crashed against her consciousness like waves against a shore. Images of subjugated worlds, broken species, and endless conquest flooded her mind. The Xar wasn't just threatening them. It was trying to psychically force humanity's surrender through her. "Doctor." Cooper's voice seemed distant, underwater. Through the mental assault, she heard the distinctive click of his sidearm being drawn. The Xar's guards raised their weapons, organic-looking devices that pulsed with sickly green energy. What happened next would be debated in military academies for decades to come. Cooper, acting on pure instinct, fired his standard-issue sonic disruptor, a non-lethal weapon chosen specifically for its diplomatic acceptability. The sound frequency, calibrated for human nervous systems, should have been harmless to the Xar. Instead, the ambassador screamed. The alien's environmental suit cracked, crystalline fragments exploding outward as the creature writhed in apparent agony. Its guards dropped their weapons, their own suits developing spiderweb patterns of damage. The high-pitched sound, reverberating off the lunar base's walls, was having an effect no one had predicted. "Everybody down," Mitchell shouted, dragging Cooper behind the conference table as the Xar's suits began to fail catastrophically. The room's emergency containment shields snapped into place just as the alien's environmental systems ruptured completely. In the chaos that followed, Mitchell's scientific mind never stopped working. She noted how the Xar's crystalline biology reacted to the sonic frequency, how their supposedly superior technology shattered under the harmonic resonance. Most importantly, she noticed how their weapons, dropped in their owner's death throes, remained intact. "Major," she said, still catching her breath, "I need those weapons secured and transferred to my lab immediately." She pulled out her tablet, already documenting the sonic frequency that had proved so devastating. "And I need every scrap of data from your disruptor settings." Cooper nodded grimly, keeping his weapon trained on the fallen aliens. "Ma'am, I think we just started a war." Mitchell's fingers flew across her tablet's surface as she initiated emergency protocols. "No, Major. They started it when they tried to enslave my mind." She looked up at the crystalline remains of the Xar ambassador. "They just didn't expect us to fight back." Above them, through the lunar base's reinforced windows, Earth hung like a blue jewel in the void. Mitchell knew that somewhere up there, a Xar fleet was probably already mobilizing. They had defeated the undefeatable, killed the unkillable, and discovered a weakness no one had found in 10 millennia of Xar conquest. "Get me a direct line to Pentagon," she ordered, already mentally composing her report. "And Major, good job breaking protocol. Sometimes humanity's greatest strength is knowing when to throw the rulebook out the window." As alarms blared and emergency teams rushed in, Mitchell allowed herself a grim smile. The Xar had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed humanity's diplomatic restraint was a sign of weakness. They were about to learn that humans had not survived countless wars among themselves by being easy prey. The first battle was over. The war was about to begin. Admiral Jessica Hayes stared at the holographic display floating above the Pentagon's Crisis Command Center, watching as red dots representing Starfleet movements multiplied across known space. Each dot represented hundreds of ships, each ship capable of devastating a small continent. The display looked like an infection spreading across the galaxy, with Earth at its center. "Tell me again what you found, Rodriguez," she ordered, not taking her eyes off the projection. Tom Rodriguez, the Pentagon's lead xenological analyst, cleared his throat. His rumpled shirt and dark-circled eyes betrayed 3 days without sleep. The transmission came through a quantum channel we didn't even know existed. Our new friend took an enormous risk sending it. He tapped his tablet, and a new hologram appeared, the crystalline structure of a Xar brain. "They're not just angry, Admiral. They're evolving." Rodriguez zoomed in on specific neural pathways. The Xar share a low-level psychic field, something like a species-wide quantum entanglement. When we killed their ambassador and survived their initial psychic attack, we didn't just hurt their pride. We triggered a biological response in their entire species. Hayes finally turned from the strategic display. "Explain it in English, Tom. They're literally being rewritten on a genetic level. Every Xar, everywhere, is becoming more aggressive, more focused on war. It's like their entire species has a collective fight-or-flight response, and we just triggered fight across 12,000 light-years of space." "Jesus," Hayes whispered. "How did our rogue friend discover this?" Rodriguez's expression darkened. "She's a Xar genetic engineer. She felt it happening to herself, and found a way to partially block it. She's fighting her own biology to warn us." The Admiral's next question was interrupted by a junior analyst bursting into the room. "Sir, Mom, sorry, but you need to see this." The young officer's hands shook as he transferred data to the main display. The hologram shifted to show transmission intercepts from across the galaxy. Alien stock markets, betting pools, resource allocations, all focused on one thing: the coming war between humanity and the Xar. "The whole galaxy is watching," the junior analyst explained. "And they're betting against us. Heavy." Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. "They don't know humans very well, do they?" Hayes studied the data, her military mind already calculating possibilities. "What's the Vegas line on humanity?" 10,000 to 1 against, Mom." "Good odds," Hayes replied. "I want every penny in our black budget invested in ourselves through alien proxies. When we win this thing, we're going to need the resources for reconstruction." "When, not if." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Hayes pointed to a particular data stream. "Look at their battle formations, their fleet movements. It's perfect, precise, evolved over millennia of conquest. And that's their weakness." She turned to face her team. "They fight like machines. Perfect, predictable machines. But humanity, we're chaos incarnate." Her next words were cut off by a priority alert. Dr. Mitchell's face appeared on the main screen, her excitement palpable even through the lunar base's compressed video feed. "Admiral, we've cracked it. Their weapons, they're based on crystalline technology, just like their biology. The same sonic frequencies that shattered their environmental suits can disrupt their entire weapon systems. We can't match their technology, but we can break it." Hayes felt a surge of hope, but kept her expression neutral. "Good work, Doctor. But we'll need more than one trick to win this war." "Oh, we have more," Mitchell grinned. "Major Cooper and I have been experimenting. Turns out their psychic field has other vulnerabilities. They think as one. Fight as one. They're not ready for humanity's greatest weapon, which is unpredictability, chaos, individual initiative. Everything they've bred out of their conquered species, everything they've evolved beyond. They're perfect, Admiral, and perfect systems can't handle random variables." Hayes looked back at the galaxy map, at the overwhelming forces gathering against Earth. The odds were astronomical, the enemy unfathomably powerful. But for the first time since the crisis began, she felt something like optimism. "Rodriguez," she commanded, Get me everything we have on asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, and chaos theory, and find out if we still have contact with our rogue Czar friend. She just became the most important alien in the galaxy. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin, and humanity had no intention of fighting fair. Marine Colonel Kate Sullivan had seen a lot of strange things in her 20 years of service, but nothing quite prepared her for this. In a hidden cavern beneath the surface of Europa, she stood face to face with representatives of 7 species, each conquered by the Czar over the past millennium. Their makeshift council chamber was carved from ice, reinforced with salvaged alien tech that hummed softly in the background. "Let me get this straight," Sullivan said, her breath visible in the frigid air. "None of your species developed weapons beyond basic hunting tools. No wars at all." The Nexian delegate, a being that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a quantum computer, clicked its crystalline mandibles. "Why would we? Until the Czar came, we had achieved perfect social harmony. Violence was evolutionarily disadvantageous." Sullivan exchanged glances with her XO, Lieutenant Walsh. They'd both read enough history to know that perfect harmony usually meant perfect control. "The Czar didn't just conquer us," the Nexian continued. "They modified us, selected for compliance, bred out aggression. Generation by generation, we became more manageable." A warning klaxon interrupted them. Czar patrol detected. Sullivan's team moved with practiced efficiency, weapons ready. But instead of hiding, she made a decision that would change the course of the war. "Everyone stay here," she ordered, checking her tactical display. "Those patrols are using old reactor tech, unstable, and about to fail." The alien delegates watched in bewilderment as Sullivan and her team sprinted toward danger rather than away from it. They'd reached the Czar patrol just as their reactor began its catastrophic breakdown. The scene that followed would be remembered in alien histories for centuries. Humans, the supposed primitives, executed a perfect rescue operation. Sullivan's team breached the Czar vessel, extracted the crew, and contained the reactor breach, all while keeping the Czar under armed guard. The patrol's survivors found themselves in an unprecedented position, alive, captured, and owing their lives to their enemies. Back in the ice chamber, Sullivan faced the stunned delegates. "We could have let them die. It would have been tactically advantageous. But humans learned something in our violent history that the Czar never could: the difference between being capable of violence and being ruled by it." The Maraxian ambassador, a being of living vapor contained within an environmental field, shifted colors in what Sullivan had learned was amazement. "Your species, you fight wars, yet you show mercy. You develop weapons, yet you use them to save enemies. How is this possible?" Sullivan smiled grimly. "Because we never achieved perfect harmony. We never stopped fighting, never stopped questioning, never stopped struggling with our own nature. And that means we never stopped growing." She activated a holographic display, showing Earth's military history. "Every war taught us something. Not just about fighting, but about why we fight. About when not to fight. About the difference between warriors and murderers." The aliens watched, transfixed, as millennia of human conflict played out before them. But Sullivan noticed something unexpected. They weren't watching the battles. They were watching the aftermath. Enemies becoming allies, soldiers showing mercy, nations rebuilding together. "The Czar think their genetic engineering made you weak," Sullivan said. "But they made a mistake. They left the foundation. You still have the capacity to fight. You just need to remember how. And more importantly, why." A low murmur spread through the chamber as translator units processed her words. The Nexian delegate stepped forward. "Teach us. It won't be easy," Sullivan warned. "We're not just talking about combat training. We're talking about fundamentally changing how you think about conflict, about yourselves. The Czar changed what we are." The Maraxian vapors swirled intensely. "Perhaps it's time we changed back." Sullivan nodded, already formulating plans. "Then let's begin with Lesson 1. The most important weapon isn't the one in your hands. It's the one in your mind. The Xar may have bred out your aggression, but they couldn't breed out your intelligence, your desire for freedom. She gestured to the captured Xar patrol, now sedated but alive. And they definitely didn't expect you to learn from humans. That's going to be their biggest mistake. The revolution was about to begin, not with a bang, but with a lesson in what it truly meant to be a warrior. Dr. Marcus Williams walked through the underground halls of Project Phoenix, buried deep beneath the Nevada desert. The facility hummed with activity, a bizarre mix of military precision and what looked like the world's most expensive gaming setup. He paused at the main observation window, watching as 20-something Tyler Death Knight Rodriguez piloted a quantum-entangled drone through a series of impossible maneuvers. "Tell me again why we're letting gamers pilot our most advanced weapons," General Morrison demanded, appearing beside Williams. Williams grinned as Tyler executed a move that broke 3 known laws of physics. Because, General, gamers don't know what's impossible. They don't care about proper military doctrine. They just care about winning. On the testing floor, Tyler's drone danced through the debris field, using fragments of destroyed targets as impromptu shields while launching counterattacks from angles that made the Combat Ice threat assessment protocols crash. The drone's quantum engines left ghost images in reality itself, turning space into a kaleidoscope of potential positions. "The Xar think in straight lines," Williams explained, bringing up comparison footage. "Look at their attack patterns from the Luma incident. Perfect spacing, perfect formation, perfect predictability. But our pilots," he gestured as Tyler's drone seemed to be in 5 places simultaneously, "they think in chaos theory." The general's skepticism was interrupted by alarms. On the main screen, a Xar patrol had appeared at the edge of the solar system. This wasn't a simulation anymore. "Tyler," Williams called over the comm. "Live targets. Rules of engagement are in effect." The young gamer's response was cool and professional, a far cry from his usual streaming personality. "Copy that. Dock time to show them what Earth games are all about." What followed was unlike anything in military history. Tyler's drone approached the Xar ships conventionally at first, appearing to be a standard scout. Then it split into quantum duplicates, each one simultaneously real and unreal until observed. The Xar computers, trying to track multiple probability states, began to overload. "They can't handle it," Williams breathed, watching the data streams. "Their targeting systems are designed for objective reality, not quantum superposition. They literally can't process the idea that something could be in multiple places until observed." The Xar ships opened fire, their crystalline weapons blazing. But they were shooting at ghosts, at possibilities rather than realities. Tyler's drone danced through the barrage, its quantum state fluctuating with each movement, guided by thousands of hours of gaming instincts rather than military protocols. "Schrodinger's fighter," Morrison muttered. "The damn thing is alive and dead. Until it hits them." The engagement was over in minutes. The Xar patrol retreated, their systems compromised by trying to engage what their computers insisted was a logical impossibility. They hadn't fired a single effective shot. Williams turned to his team. "Get me every professional gamer you can find. Every speedrunner, every sequence breaker, every person who's ever found a way to break game physics. The Xar want to fight a war. Let's show them what happens when reality gets patched." The next few weeks were a blur of innovation. Williams watched as his facility filled with an unlikely mix of military personnel and pro gamers. The gamers taught combat pilots how to think outside physical laws, while the pilots taught the gamers military discipline. The result was something entirely new: warriors who didn't just break the rules of engagement, but the rules of reality itself. "We're receiving transmissions from the Xar fleet," his assistant reported one morning. "They're demanding we stop violating the laws of physics." Williams laughed. "Send them footage of a speedrunner breaking Mario 64. Tell them that's just how humans play games." The message was clear. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were changing the nature of warfare itself. The Klar had spent millennia perfecting their tactics, but they'd never faced an enemy who treated the laws of physics as merely suggested guidelines. "General," Williams said, watching as another team of gamer pilots prepared for deployment, "I think we just turned the universe into one giant game exploit, and we're the ones who wrote the walkthrough." The innovation race wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about imagination. And that was one resource humanity had in infinite supply. Bobby Ray Jenkins watched as the largest fleet in galactic history emerged from hyperspace, their crystalline ships refracting sunlight like 1,000 deadly prisms. From his control center in the converted Kuiper Belt mining facility, the former NASCAR engineer allowed himself a small smile. "Y'all picked the wrong solar system to invade," he drawled into his comm. "Colonel Sullivan, they're right where we want them." Across the solar system, hidden weapons platforms powered up. What the Kar saw as debris fields were actually carefully calculated firing solutions. Every piece of space junk had been positioned over months of preparation, creating a gravitational slingshot network that would turn their own momentum into a weapon. Initiating Operation Newton's Revenge, Sullivan's voice crackled through the comm. "All units, execute on my mark." The Kar fleet moved in perfect formation, their Supreme Commander Zixful confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. Their tactical displays showed minimal resistance, just scattered human vessels retreating toward Earth. That's when the first shipping container exploded. Thousands of seemingly abandoned cargo containers, scattered throughout the outer system, suddenly burst open. Each released a swarm of Dr. Mitchell's reprogrammed nanobots, their crystalline structures resonating at the exact frequency that had shattered the ambassador's suit months ago. First wave impact in 3, 2, 1. Jenkins counted down, watching as the nanobots made contact with the Xar ships. The effect was devastating. Crystal hulls began to vibrate, their perfect atomic structures disrupted by the precise sonic attack. But the Xar adapted quickly, shifting their shield frequencies. That's when Sullivan sprung the second trap. "All gaming squadrons, execute Operation Speedrun." The quantum-entangled fighters emerged from hiding, piloted by Earth's elite gamers. They moved in patterns that shouldn't be possible, exploiting physics glitches that Dr. Williams' team had discovered. The Xar computers, trying to predict their movements, began crashing as reality itself seemed to stutter around the human ships. Commander Zixtel's orders became frantic. "Impossible. Their ships cannot be in quantum superposition. It defies all tactical doctrine." "That's the point, sugar," Jenkins muttered, activating his gravity slingshot network. Asteroids that had seemed to be drifting randomly suddenly accelerated, their paths forming a complex web of gravitational assists. Each piece of debris built up speed, turning into relativistic projectiles that tore through the Xar fleet's perfect formations. But the Xar weren't undefeated for nothing. They began adapting, their collective consciousness working to process the impossible scenarios humans were creating. That's when Sullivan played their trump card. "Dr. Mitchell, initiate the Trojan Horse protocols." The civilian rescue ships that had been evacuating Earth's outer colonies suddenly transformed. Their hulls split open, revealing they were actually carriers filled with Marine boarding parties. Sullivan led the charge herself, her teams equipped with sonic weapons and quantum phase armor. "Remember your training," she broadcast to the liberated alien warriors fighting alongside her Marines. "They expect you to fight like them. Show them what humanity taught you." The boarding actions were chaos incarnate. Khazar warriors, used to fighting as a unified force, found themselves facing opponents who employed tactics from 1,000 different human cultures. A Maraxian warrior using samurai techniques fought alongside a human marine applying parkour to zero-gravity combat. Commander Zixtal watched in horror as his perfect battle plan disintegrated. "This isn't war," he transmitted. "This is madness." "Nah," Jenkins replied, launching his final wave of gravitational traps. "This is human ingenuity. We didn't survive millions of years of evolution by fighting fair. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Humanity had turned their entire solar system into a weapon, using every trick, hack, and exploit they'd learned from their long history of conflict. The mighty Xar fleet, which had never known defeat, was being taken apart by strategies that their perfect tactical computers insisted were impossible. As the last Xar ships retreated or surrendered, Sullivan's voice came through the comm. "Earth Actual, this is boarding team leader. You're not going to believe what we found in their command ship's database. The Xar, they're not just at war with us. They're at war with themselves. And I think we just gave their suppressed colonies exactly what they needed. Hope." The battle for Sol was over. The real war was about to begin. Captain Michael Mad Dog Turner stood in the shadows of a captured Xar dreadnought's crystal corridor, watching as another patrol passed by without noticing his team. Operation Trojan Horse was working better than anyone had expected. Turns out the Xar were so convinced of their superiority that they never considered someone might be hiding inside their own ships. "Status report," he whispered into his quantum-encrypted comm. "Team 2 in position at the crystalline core," Lieutenant Rodriguez replied. "Dr. Williams' bypass is working. They can't detect our neural patterns when we're thinking irrationally enough." Turner smiled. Who would have thought that human creativity would act as a cloaking device against psychic detection? The Xar's group mind literally couldn't process the chaos of human imagination. "Dr. Mitchell, how's our culture bomb coming along?" "Broadcasting now," her voice crackled through the comm. "Every conquered world in this sector is about to get a crash course in human history, art, music, literature. Everything from Shakespeare to K-pop. But most importantly, every rebellion story we've ever told." The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. While the Xar expected a conventional military counterattack, humanity had decided to wage mimetic warfare instead. Their ships, hidden inside captured vessels, were spreading through Xar space like a virus, broadcasting the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created: ideas. "First reports coming in," Rodriguez announced. "You're going to want to see this, Captain." Turner made his way to their makeshift command center, carefully maintaining his irrational thought patterns to avoid detection. The feeds showing various conquered worlds filled the screens. What he saw took his breath away. On one world, the naturally peaceful Maraxians were performing their first act of civil disobedience, inspired by footage of Gandhi's Salt March. Another screen showed Nexian youth creating art for the first time in generations, their crystalline structures resonating with human music in ways that disrupted the Xar's control frequencies. "They're not just copying us," Mitchell observed, her voice filled with wonder. "They're adapting our ideas to their own cultures. Look, that's a Tchaikovsky ballet performed through quantum probability waves. And those patterns, they're using our memes as encryption for resistance communications." But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young Xar scientist, part of a growing minority fighting their species' genetic drive toward conquest, had discovered something revolutionary in human viral videos. The chaos. The scientist's encrypted message read, "It's not just masking your thoughts from our detection. It's healing us. Your art, your music, your endless variety. It's providing an alternative to the genetic imperative of conquest. We never knew there could be so many ways to think, to be, to exist." Turner watched as the revolution spread across the screens, each world finding its own way to resist. The Xar had expected to fight ships and soldiers. Instead, they were fighting against rock music and protest art, against poetry and dance, against every form of expression humanity had ever created. "Sir," Rodriguez called out urgently, massive energy spike from the Xar capital world. They're trying to shut down their own quantum communication network." "Too late," Mitchell grinned. "We've already introduced them to the concept of peer-to-peer networking. Turns out oppressive regimes have the same weaknesses everywhere, even across species." Turner nodded, understanding the magnitude of what they were witnessing. They can't stop this signal without cutting off their own group mind. And if they do that, they lose the very thing that makes them the Xar, Mitchell finished. Their perfect unity, their coordinated conquest. It all falls apart the moment they try to silence the revolution. As if to prove her point, new transmissions began flooding in. Xar ships were breaking formation across the galaxy, their crews choosing individuality over the collective. The mighty Dominion was facing something worse than military defeat. It was facing cultural upheaval. All teams, Turner broadcast, maintain position, and continue transmission. The best way to win this war isn't to destroy the enemy. It's to convince them not to be the enemy anymore. Mitchell completed his thought. Humanity's greatest victory might not be that we never lost a war, but that we showed the galaxy a better way to win one. Turner concluded, watching as freedom spread across the stars, one meme at a time. Lieutenant Sarah Reynolds stood before an unlikely class of students, former Xar warriors, liberated Meraxians, quantum state Nexians, and a dozen other species she still couldn't pronounce the names of. The classroom was a repurposed crystal chamber aboard a captured Xar battleship, now serving as a mobile academy for the revolution. Today's lesson, she announced, tossing a deck of cards onto the central table, is poker. A Meraxian's vapor form swirled in confusion. Lieutenant, we came to learn warfare. How does this primitive gambling ritual? Show of hands, Reynolds interrupted, then quickly added, or tentacles, or probability clouds. Who here has ever successfully lied to a Xar? Silence. Exactly. The Xar built their empire on perfect unity, perfect predictability. But poker? She dealt the cards with practiced precision. Poker is about making your opponent believe whatever you want them to believe. It's about controlling information. As the aliens struggled with the concepts of bluffing and tells, Reynolds received an urgent transmission from Admiral Hayes. The holoscreen showed chaos erupting across Xar space. It's working better than we expected, Hayes reported. The Xar's genetic modifications to their subjected species, they never accounted for human teaching methods. Your students aren't just learning to fight. They're learning to think independently. Reynolds watched as one of her Nexian students pulled off a perfect bluff, its crystalline structure vibrating with excitement. They're naturals, Admiral. Once they understand that rules can be bent, they start breaking the right ones, Hayes finished. But we got a new problem. The Xar collective consciousness is fracturing. The ones who've been exposed to human culture are breaking away from the hive mind. It's causing a civil war within their species. On the tactical displays, Xar ships were turning against each other. The empire that had never known internal conflict was tearing itself apart. Permission to execute Operation Shakespeare, ma'am. Hayes raised an eyebrow. You want to teach the Xar about human literature during a civil war? Not just any literature, Reynolds grinned. Stories about civil wars. About choosing between duty and conscience. About protagonists who look like villains to the other side. Understanding dawned in Hayes' eyes. You're not just teaching them how to fight. I'm teaching them how to question, how to doubt, how to change. Reynolds turned back to her class, where a heated poker game was now in full swing. The Xar thought they could selectively breed out aggression from their conquered species, but they didn't realize what they were actually breeding. Adaptability. Across the galaxy, the revolution was taking forms no one had predicted. Meraxian vapor dancers were using their quantum states to transmit encrypted messages through their performances. Nexian crystal singers had adapted human music into weapons that could shatter Xar control systems. Even the rogue Xar scientists had formed an underground network, using human memes to mask their communications from the hive mind. Last hand, Reynolds announced to her class. The stakes. Your homework is to take what you've learned about deception and apply it to your next resistance operation. As her students played, she received another update. The Xar collective was now minority faction. Most of their species had chosen individual consciousness over the hive mind, inspired by human concepts of personal freedom and identity. "Lieutenant," one of her Xar students called out, his crystalline form shimmering with newfound independence. "I believe I understand now. The game isn't about the cards." "It never was," Reynolds smiled. "Just like this war isn't about the weapons. It's about learning to think for yourself, to make your own choices, to bluff when they expect force," a Meraxian finished, "to fold when they expect resistance, to change the game entirely," the Nexian added, laying down a royal flush. Reynolds looked at her unlikely students, former enemies becoming not just allies, but teachers themselves. They were spreading human ideas faster than any fleet could travel, turning the Xar's perfect order into beautiful chaos. "Admiral," she reported back to Hayes, "I think we just won the galaxy's biggest poker game. And the best part, the House never saw our tell. The revolution wasn't just succeeding, it was evolving beyond anything its creators had imagined. And at its heart were the lessons humanity had learned through millennia of imperfection: how to adapt, how to change, and most importantly, how to help others do the same." Admiral Jessica Hayes stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, her dress uniform adorned with medals from a dozen different species. The chamber itself was a testament to change. Crystalline architecture seamlessly blended with human design principles, order and chaos in perfect harmony. "The war is over," she began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "But our real work is just beginning." Behind her, holographic displays showed the transformation sweeping across the galaxy. Former Xar worlds pulsed with new life as their inhabitants discovered individuality. The remnants of the Dominion's fleet were being converted into schools, hospitals, and cultural centers under the guidance of Dr. Mitchell's team. "Humanity never lost a war," Hayes continued, "not because we were stronger, but because we never stopped learning from our defeats. And now we offer that same lesson to the galaxy." Colonel Sullivan stepped forward, accompanied by her mixed-species training cadre. "The Terran Defense Academy is now accepting students from all worlds, including former Xar territories. Our curriculum isn't just about military tactics, it's about understanding when not to fight." Dr. Marcus Williams activated a holographic display, showing the new quantum harmonics developed by combining human creativity with Xar crystal technology. "By working together, we've achieved what neither of us could alone. The same quantum field that once enforced the Xar's unity now connects voluntary participants in the galaxy's first truly cooperative neural network." Bobby Ray Jenkins, now head of the Interstellar Transportation Authority, grinned as he demonstrated the new hybrid drive systems. "Turns out when you combine NASCAR engineering with alien tech, you get some pretty interesting results. We're looking at faster-than-light travel that's actually fun." But it was Lieutenant Reynolds who delivered the most powerful message. She stepped up to the podium with 3 of her former students, a reformed Xar warrior, a Meraxian resistance leader, and a Nexian crystal singer. "The species that never lost a war," she said, "has finally learned how to win the peace. Our greatest victory wasn't defeating the Xar, it was helping them, and everyone else, find their own path to freedom." The Xar representative, his crystalline form now shimmering with individual patterns rather than the uniform resonance of the old collective, addressed the council. "We sought perfect unity through force. Humanity showed us perfect harmony through diversity. Our defeat was our salvation." Dr. Emma Mitchell, who had started it all with that first contact gone wrong, presented her final research. "The genetic modifications the Xar used to control their subjects are reversing naturally through exposure to human culture and ideas. It turns out the need for freedom, for individual expression, isn't just a human trait, it's a universal one. We just needed to remember how to access it." Hayes returned to the podium for her closing remarks. "Today we established the Galactic Defense Alliance, not to control, but to protect. Every member world will maintain its independence while contributing its unique strengths to our common defense. And most importantly, we'll maintain the one advantage that saved humanity time and time again: our ability to disagree, to debate, to see things differently. As if to prove her point, a friendly argument broke out between Jenkins and a Maraxian engineer about the proper way to modify a quantum engine for racing. In the gallery, Reynolds' poker class had turned into an interspecies diplomatic course, using card games to teach the art of negotiation. The species that never lost a war, Hayes concluded, has finally found something better than victory. We found understanding. We found growth. We found a way to help others win their own battles. She looked out at the assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds, each unique, each free, each contributing to a harmony that was stronger for its imperfections. The war is over. Let the real adventure begin. As the council chamber erupted in applause, Mitchell leaned over to Sullivan. You know what the best part is? The K'ar were right about one thing. Resistance was futile. They just didn't realize they'd be the ones adapting to us. Sullivan watched as her alien students demonstrated their unique combinations of human tactics and native abilities. No, Doc. The best part is that we all adapted to each other. Maybe that's why we never lost a war, because we never stopped learning how to win the peace. Above them, Earth's image shone among the stars of the council chamber, no longer alone, no longer just defending itself, but teaching the galaxy how to grow beyond the need for conquest. The species that never lost a war had finally found its true victory, teaching others how to win without fighting.